Hi guys, welcome to Counterpoints. My name's Conor. I'm a science fiction, politics, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and I would argue a real Republican. The Republican Party is in trouble because the soul is being fought for by paleo-conservatives, Christian nationalist, dissident right-wingers like Mr. Nick the Knife Fuentes. They're being mainstreamed by media pundits like Tucker Carlson, and there is a fight between the Zionist conservatives, the neoconservatives. I would argue the social conservatives should probably have something to say about Nick Fuentes, and the fiscal conservatives definitely should have something to say. So what the future of the Republican Party looks like is actually up in the air. And so we're going to take a look at Nick Fuentes, one of the youngest dissident right-wing speakers who has a lot of momentum around him, and we'll take it from there. I'll be pausing intermittently and eating breakfast tacos that my wife brought me.
Say specifically as it pertains to, you, I think, have said it's the neocons, it's the neocons.
Andrew JD says Z loves you, so she'd be happy to bring you out. I'll text her.
And I think that neoconservatism, where does it arise from? It arises from Jewish leftists who were mugged by reality when they saw the surprise attack in the Yom Kippur War.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of it for sure. But then, how do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, the Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, Christian Zionists. What is that?
Right.
And I could just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody, because what? Because it's Christian heresy and I'm offended by that as a Christian. That's why. So I don't why not? I'm pissed at the neocons, very pissed. I've said that a million times. I've been mad since December of 2003 when I went to Iraq. And so I went and asked straightforward questions to Ted Cruz because that seemed like he was a sitting senator who's serving for Israel by his own description. He seemed like a worthy target. I'm not going after MTG, who's the most sincere. Why not go after Ted Cruz? I don't understand.
Well, again, with Marjorie, I was a friend of hers, and she spoke at my conference, and then the day after, she pretended like she didn't know me. And that was in 2022. But it's a continuum. You said yourself, you showed up in college, one set of views, they evolve as you interact with reality, as the reality itself changes, as you learn things, you grow, whatever, people change. Well, and look, now that everyone agrees with me, I will graciously forgive them for being
But why
so
make
hostile.
it personal? Who cares?
It's not personal for me. With Marjorie, if she wanted to, be aligned or whatever, I would totally be on board with her.
But where do you disagree with her?
Cameron Mosley says, funny how Nick brings up neoconservatives, but doesn't bring up Irving Kristol or William F. Buckley. No, I think he does. I think he does. So I wouldn't, I've heard Nick talk about Irving and Bill Kristol repeatedly. I've heard him talk about neoconservatism at length. I've heard him talk about paleoconservatism versus neoconservatism. So I actually, if there's any quote unquote rhetorical sins of omission, I don't think it wouldn't be because Nick wouldn't be comfortable talking about those topics. I think he actually would be incredibly comfortable talking about paleoconservatism versus neoconservatism.
I don't know, because I don't know what her new views are. She's really only come around on Israel this year, and I've been talking about this issue for 10 years. And
right, okay, all right, you win, but
no, but it's not. But it's not like that. It's just it's a little. It feels like BS to me that, and I've said this on Twitter the other day. It's I got treated like I didn't exist.
Right, I get it.
Canceled for 10 years for saying these things, and that's really where all this drama comes from. A time when there was this intense censorship and nobody was on board with this stuff. Again, Marjorie, she fired one of my people was working in her office. She fired that guy because someone found out that a Groyper was working in her office. And, that guy got his life ruined. And she pretended like she didn't know me and lied and said, I had no idea the conference I was speaking at. She knew exactly what it was. And that's fine. But now that she's on the same page, there's this expectation okay, well, why did you have a problem with her in the past? It's because she was on the other team in the past.
Yeah. Well, so was everybody.
Yeah.
I mean,
so now
so are you.
Yeah.
I mean, so what? I mean, what? Why not? It's got to be bigger than just like us, right? And it's not. I don't think. Well, I'll speak for myself. I don't feel like I'm at war with the neocons or Israel. It's much bigger than that. It's like you want to restore America to a place where your grandchildren would enjoy growing up. That's it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and as far as Marjorie,
so it's not who cares. What you know what I mean? Like, okay, lots of people hurt if Dave Rubin called me tonight, which he would never do, though he has my cell. And
Nick cares. And by the way, just talking about this emotionally, not talking about this politically. Nick cares because he was thrown under the bus for a decade, and now the right wing is aping his talking points. They say that, like they sanitize it, right? They're like, oh, we're not criticizing Israel. We're criticizing the giga-Zionists of Israel who are doing messed up things in the West Bank and Gaza. Oh, we're not criticizing all of Jews. We're criticizing the state of Israel. So there's always the caveat in order to like not be called anti-Semitic, even if you're going to be called anti-Semitic anyways. And there's a broader appeal to big tent GOP anti-racism and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is that Nick's obviously had a impact on discourse because, in my opinion, he staked out the furthest right-wing position you could really go without getting killed. And by the way, somebody tried to kill Nick. So realistically, Nick staked out the furthest right position where you could get killed, but maybe not everybody would kill you, right? And I think the only way that would make Nick's position more dangerous if he was actually like a Nazi. Now, we've talked about this before. He's an anti-Semitic, Christian theocrat, authoritarian, who doesn't care about the Constitution and blah, 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 blah. We've already talked about the distinctions. But I think the only way that he could risk his life more was to be like an out and out white supremacist, neo-nationalist, racial anti-Semite. Then a few more people might actually try to physically kill him. So, but by staking out that position and then MAGA accelerating to the right, he was there waiting for them with philosophical open arms to say, oh, you want to go the furthest you can go without getting killed? I'm right here. Give me your most passionate people.
And said, I'm really sorry I called you Hitler. Like, I didn't mean it. You're raising lots of legitimate questions, which I think I sort of agree with or am thinking about in a deeper way. I'd be like, great.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care.
And look.
What is the criticism of Tucker for interviewing Nick when he is pushing back on him and his views? Because there was other like more clean shit. Like he brings up like, oh, like I like Stalin. And they didn't dig into that. He just let it happen.
Tucker, that's why I'm sitting here, Right. I mean, because we had a contentious dialogue.
Well, I thought you were a Fed. I
thought you were a Fed.
I was a Fed.
Yeah.
I'm not a Fed. But whatever, I don't care what people think.
We showed each other a badge as we know well.
No, but I thought you were a Fed because I was like, why not? It's not cucking to say you're not talking about all Jews when you oppose a foreign policy position. It's not. There's nothing liberal about that. It's just true. That's the Christian position. Mm-hmm. Okay. And two, why are you attacking like the best people and not the worst people?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, he disavowed me for my views on Israel and said I talk too much about white people and Christianity. And to me, that's like a sincere ideological disagreement.
I get it.
And, same thing with Marjorie. Marjorie fired my guy. She disavowed me. And, and you worked with Blumenthal on that article, but you called me on the phone and we talked.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, what? From my perspective, this is all so stupid and inside baseball and whatever, but for the record, I was like, first of all, who is this kid? I'm working at Fox News. I'm aware there's an internet, but I'm more out of it than you may appreciate. And I'm like, out of nowhere, attacking this one. I had Joe Kent here to my house and did this interview with him. And I'm always in search of a sincere politician. Don't have to agree on everything, but I really believe sincerity is the whole game. Mm-hmm. If someone's heart is pure, he will be brave. Mm-hmm. I always have thought that, and it's turned out to be true. Marjorie's a perfect example. And that's all that matters. If you're afraid inside, if you're weak inside, you will crumble when it matters. Mm-hmm. So I really felt like, wow, Joe, don't agree with him on everything, of course, but I was like, this guy is really sincere. He's like a good person. And then you show up and you're like, he's a CIA officer and he was a CIA contractor, but like really like crush the guy. And it's like, why of all people, you agree on 90% of stuff, you know, that was my view. And I was like, well, clearly this kid's a Fed.
Right. But you didn't know the whole story.
I didn't. You're absolutely right.
And look, and now that, and I want to be, I'm not trying to be combative. I think that.
Go ahead. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
I mean, here's what I'm trying to say is now that Marjorie is pushing in the right direction, I absolutely support everything she's saying. And I've not been critical of her at all this year.
Yeah.
Because I think that what she's doing is extremely courageous. And I think you're right. She is sincere.
So it sounds like you're, not to put words in your mouth, but your life experience has left you so stung by the Republican establishment. You don't trust anybody, it sounds like.
Well, no, I mean, these people attacked me when the rules were different, and now they got better, and now I'm good with them. I mean, I'm willing to be good with them, but I think that I don't know if Marjorie still has a problem with me or not.
I don't know. I do know, though, and this is the last criticism I will level, and it's maybe not even your fault, but I do know that, you know, the coordinated attacks against totally reasonable questions about what's in America's interest and what's not, those are all coordinated by the Israeli government. It's all come to light now. And they're against me. I've always thought I have the world's most moderate position on Israel. Don't hate Israel. Just don't want to get involved in their wars, don't want to pay for this, don't want to pay for abortion on demand in a foreign country, sorry. When we're cutting food stamps on our own, like that's outrageous. It's not America first. That's my view. I'm not embarrassed of it at all. They are totally determined to take me out, I think because I'm reasonable. Who would disagree with that? And call me all these names, the most dangerous anti-Semite. I'm not even an anti-Semite. And they're not doing that to you. Because this is my view, and that's not necessarily your fault, but because they're like, Fuentes discredits the reasonable people because he's always banging on about the Jews. And so he makes everyone else look like a Nazi. And so it's like he's playing a pretty valuable role in the same way that Israel has always funded extremism throughout the Middle East, including Hamas, because it discredits the reasonable people. That's a fact.
Yeah. I would just say I disagree. I mean, you know, because you said the other day, they like me. I don't know what you're talking about when you say that because
I don't know.
Let me just kind of rebut that.
Well, by the way, I'm not saying you have anything to do with this. I'm just saying I've noticed the phenomenon.
Totally. And I just reject that because they have been messing with me for my entire adult life. I mean,
the
ADL got me banned on YouTube. The SPLC posted my house on their website.
What do you mean posted your house?
They posted a photo of my house on their website.
How can they do that?
I guess that's a free speech thing.
The SPLC posted a picture of your house on their website?
Yes.
When?
In 2022.
Actually?
Yes, they wrote an article. They said Nick Fuentes bought a building in this city. And they said, we interviewed his neighbors and property records reveal this and that. And on the front page, the picture for the article is my house where I live.
That's crazy. And then someone showed up with a gun and tried to kill you at that house?
Yes. So that's why I say, you know, you say, well, they're not doing this to you. It's like the ZOA, the SPLC, the ADL, the Daily Wire. All these groups have been on me for years. So that's news to me if they're really endorsing my activities.
It could just be my perception. But I guess what I'm saying is, as someone who thinks his own views are like completely reasonable, pass every smell test, you could x-ray my soul. I don't think there's a lot of hate in there. And to the extent that they do make me feel hateful, the people who attack me, I do like say prayers about it. We're not allowed to hate people as we forgive those who trespass against us. That's like our core prayer. So I just feel like it's I don't know. Am I being paranoid? I feel like going on about the Jews like helps the neocons. That's
what about my views do you think are unreasonable if yours are reasonable?
I think, again, I don't think it's cucky. I think it's reality to say that guilt is not inherited. Blood guilt is bad. One of the reasons that I'm mad about Gaza is because the Israeli position is everyone who lives in Gaza is a terrorist because of how they were born, including the women and the children. That's not a Western view. That's an Eastern view. That's a non-Christian. That's totally incompatible with Christianity and Western civilization. They say, oh, we're the defenders of Western civilization. Not with that attitude. You're not. Collective punishment is the enemy of Western civilization.
Yeah.
And so I hate that attitude. It's genocidal. The current claims that I'm a cancer, from Ben Shapiro or whatever, we need to be excised from the body of conservatism is a genocidal position that it basically encourages violence, as they well know. The whole thing I hate.
Mm-hmm.
So like anytime you...
All right. So I probably need to catch up with what they're actively saying. But the one thing that I wanted to bring up, which I think is accurate, is that we have competing narratives within the conservative movement. And I would say that right now it's probably 70-30, 80-20 Judeo-Christian nationalism to Christian nationalism when we're talking about these narratives. However, I think the Christian nationalists have the momentum and they're making substantive inroads into the Judeo-Christian nationalism, probably because of ethno-religious and racial resentments that have bubbled up with the rise of progressive social media. So the Judeo-Christian nationalist narrative, I would argue, is that the Old Testament / Judaism is the Abrahamic origin of Christianity and to some degree Islam. The constitutional framework of the United States allows people of all faiths and denominations to work together toward shared goals. Christians, Jews, moderate Muslims, and other people of good faith can push for the betterment of the United States and the world. The United States and Israel are allies in modernizing the world through military supremacy, diplomacy, neoconservative regime change plans that can reshape the Middle East to mutual benefit. Israel can get peaceful neighbors, and the United States can have a stabilized energy market. I think this is something that I believe. I think that there are legitimate criticisms of Israel's conduct in the West Bank and Gaza. I think the fact that they haven't negotiated a two-state solution is 100% something that you can take extreme issue with. I also will not be surprised if people in my chat have a more harsh criticism of the nation state of Israel than I do, based off of the video evidence of atrocity occurring within Gaza. Now, Christian nationalists are something that was popular, not just in Germany, but also in the United States. Christian nationalism has existed the entirety of the existence of Christendom, okay? As a matter of fact, weirdly enough, I would argue that the first Christian nationalists were the generals under Constantine who argued that Christendom should be implemented into the real world. So in my opinion, whenever Constantine seized power, that was actually when Christian nationalism was born. So it's like a 2,000-year-old tradition. But what a lot of Christian nationalists believe is that Christ's covenant eliminates the need for Judaism because it's the new covenant. Judaism is vestigial. So for those of you who don't know, a T-Rex has vestigial arms. If you've ever wondered why a T-Rex has very, very, very small front arms, vestigial means like unnecessary, redundant. And so from a Christian nationalist perspective, Judaism is a vestigial religion that no longer needs to exist. World War II history. The reason why I phrased it this way is because I think that within the Christian nationalist camp, there are different people who are either Holocaust deniers, Holocaust mathematicians, or Holocaust revisionists, or they even believe the entire World War II and Holocaust narrative. They just don't care and don't think that that gives Israel some kind of special ethno-religious national license. And so the way that I phrased it was World War II history may have been exaggerated to bolster support for the fledgling state of Israel and the Zionist project. The Zionist project, of course, being the state of Israel. Israel is not a good ally. They stole our nuclear technology, aerospace technology, military technology, and intelligence, and they attacked the USS Liberty in the 1960s. Criticizing the nation state of Israel or Jews in general will result in unjustified accusations of anti-Semitism. I, of course, think some of these accusations are justified, but that's neither here nor there. The ADLE or the ADL, SPLC, ZOA, AIPAC, and Daily Wire are Israel's mouthpiece, co-opting Christian conservatives into the Judeo-Christian conservative narrative. Christians need to seize power within America so they're not a downtrodden / persecuted minority being persecuted by atheists, secularists, pagans, Muslims, and Jews. If anybody has any issue with these competing narratives, I still think that these are relatively accurate. We could add more details, but I think what I've written is accurate. So I'm going to put Christian, thank you for the kisses. Give me a second. Nationalism, hey, stop, versus Judeo-Christian conservatism. All right, let's save that, and then let's try to respond specifically to what they've said so far. In my opinion, they've really just been talking about like, oh, Nick, you need to chill. You need to chill out with the anti-Semitic remarks. That's kind of what I've heard so far. All right.
Say a whole group of people is responsible for the sins of some of its members. Like, I'm out.
Yeah, but that's not my view.
It's not. Okay. So tell me your views. Like, rather than, you're one of those people, one of the reasons I wanted to meet you is you're one of those people who is defined by clips.
Yes.
And I'm one of those people also.
Yes.
Right? So I get it. So I'm going to just shut up and you tell me what you actually believe.
Yeah. Well, and listen, I mean, and I appreciate you saying that because that's just a reality of the media environment we're in. So I don't expect you to know all my views, but I mean, as far as the Jews are concerned, I think that, like I said, you cannot actually divorce Israel and the neocons and
Grassroots for $20 says, if I had half of Nick's born-in wealth, I'd be asking what a spine costs. Both of these people are sniveling cowards. Grassroots, I hate to disagree with you, but I think I have to. I think that my frustration with Tucker is that I do think that he is a gelatinous propagandist. I think that he started simping for Russia and simping for Qatar because he knew he could make money that way. When it comes to Nick, though, I actually think Nick... I don't think he's purely a propagandist. I think he actually believes the bullshit he says.
All of those things that you talk about from Jewishness, ethnicity, religion, identity. And let me give you like a perfect example. So you say on your show that we need to treat Israel like any other country. And I sort of understand that in principle because Israel is another foreign country.
Yeah.
But Israel is unlike every other country in the sense that because the Jewish people are in a diaspora all over the world, there are significant numbers of Jews in Europe, but also in the United States. And because of their unique heritage and story, which is that they're a stateless people, they're unassimilable, they resist assimilation for thousands of years. And I think that's a good thing. And now they have this territory in Israel.
See you, patriarch.
There's a deep religious affection for the state. It's bound up in their identity, the story of the Exodus from Egypt, the promise of the land, all these things. So let's say in the United States, for example, somebody like a Sheldon Adelson, he's not Israeli. Is he an ideological neocon? Does he believe in the promise of democratic globalism? I don't think necessarily. His heart is in Israel. And it's because he is a proud Jewish person. And I guess what I'm saying is that if you are a Jewish person in America, you're sort of, and again, it's not because they're
dual loyalty
born, but it's sort of a rational self-interest politically to say, I'm a minority. I'm a religious ethnic minority. This is not really my home. My ancestral home is in Israel. There's like a natural affinity that Jews have for Israel. And I would say on top of that, for the international Jewish community, they're extremely organized. And many of them are critical of Israel or Israel's current government or the project of Israel. But I guess what they have in common, unlike, let's say, like Singapore, for example, is that they have this international community across borders, extremely organized, that is putting the interests of themselves before the interests of their home country. And there's no other country that has a similar arrangement like that. No other country has a strong identity like that, this religious blood and soil conviction, this history of being in the diaspora, stateless, wandering, persecuted, and in particular, the historic animosity between the Jewish people and the Europeans. They hate the Romans because the Romans destroyed the temple. That's why Eric Weinstein goes to the Arch of Titus and gives it the finger and takes a picture. We don't think like that as Americans and white people. We don't think about the Roman Empire in 2,000 years ago. They do. And so I guess that's really, and I don't think that's me saying the Jews. I don't think that's me being hateful. I don't think that's me being collectivist. I think that's understanding that identity politics, whether you love it or hate it, whatever you feel about it, it's a reality that we live in a world of Jews and Christians, of whites and blacks. These identities mean something to us and they mean things to each other, and we can't sort of wish them away. And it feels like white people and Christians are the only ones that do that.
There's no question about that. Your last point, for sure. One of the reasons they do that is because they've been taught to hate themselves, of course, since the Second World War. Another reason is, however, the reality of a multi-ethnic country requires you to sort of set aside community or group interests in favor of corporate interests, universal interests, national interests. And you have to do that or else it doesn't work. And so, I agree those attitudes. I mean, certainly in other parts of the world, people think this way, but you can't have that here. And so it's just important to remind everybody that, things may be generally true, but like, again, they're not always true. And there are people who just strongly disagree. And by the way, in the specific case of Israel, there are a ton of Orthodox who I know who are opposed to the state of Israel. They're just they're more Jewish than Dave Rubin, a lot more. And yet they oppose it. Jeff Sachs is like the most wonderful man, who's Jewish and most articulate kind of critic of the state of Israel that I'm aware of.
Yep, so starting to lose him, Tucker.
That's just meaningful. You can't, if everything is inherited, then there's no hope for the continuation of America. Mm-hmm. Do you see that?
Yeah, I don't think it's genetically inherited. And what you're saying about putting aside the tribal interest for the corporate interest, yes, that's absolutely the case. And that's the only way the country's going to stay together.
Exactly.
And
that's my concern.
And I absolutely agree with you. I would say, though, that the main challenge to that, a big challenge to that, is organized Jewry in America. I don't think Bill Ackman is capable of that. I don't think Sheldon Adelson is capable of that. I don't think Yoram Hazony is capable of that, for that matter. And many other, on the right and the left. And I see Jewishness as the common denominator. And you're right. It's not all Jewish people feel the same way. No one would say that, but that does seem to be the common denominator. And I just feel like it needs to be called out explicitly. And I like what you said the other day. If you're serving in another country's military or have dual citizenship, you really can't be a part of this project.
Well, that's an easy one, but I am much more comfortable as a Christian and an American keeping it on that level because, it's easy to just set universal rules that apply to everyone, not just the Jews or the Christians or anybody, just like Americans can only serve in the U.S. military or they lose their passport. I mean, I don't know. That's not hard. And
what I'm drawing, guys, while I'm listening to them talk, because now what they're talking about, what I think they've been talking about for the past few minutes is loyalty. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about national loyalty. And I think that what's interesting to me that's been popping into my head as they've been talking about this is the film Gangs of New York. And for those of you who haven't seen it, by the way, Gangs of New York is kind of incredible. And it echoes into what we're talking about right now, which almost seems silly in a modern context, where you got Bill the Butcher, who is a gang leader in the 5 Points of New York. He's a Protestant, but he's a murderous asshole. But he views his role as keeping back the barbarian Irish hordes from dominating the Native American population. And he does not mean Native Americans. He means English colonists who established the country through the Revolutionary War. And so he has this antipathy and hatred towards the Irish that manifests in a gang conflict between him and the priest, who's played by Liam Neeson, who is one of his greatest rivals. And the priest dies in a gang fight. And so Leonardo DiCaprio is the priest's son, who is taken in by Bill the Butcher in gang activity. His long-term plan is to kill Bill the Butcher in revenge for the death of his father, but he kind of takes on like a paternal role in Leonardo DiCaprio's life. And so he's conflicted between the paternal role of Bill the Butcher versus like the ethno-religious antipathy between the Irish Catholics and the Protestant Anglos. And even Bill's kind of like a walking contradiction. Like he takes the company of an Irish girl who grows up in his care, but then eventually she has romantic feelings for him. So they had a romantic relationship at one point. And then same thing with Leonardo DiCaprio. He ends up having a romantic relationship with Cameron Diaz. And so the whole point of it is it's a fucking mess. And so I think what Tucker is correctly pointing out is that ethno-religious tribalism would destroy this country. If we went back to, I only care about Irish people, I don't care about Hispanics. I don't care about Hispanics, blacks, Jews, Hindus, Sikhs, Indians, whatever, this would all fall apart. It would all fall apart because basically I would have to walk around within my own country and I would have to be fearful and antagonistic towards other Americans for no other reason besides their ethno-religious heritage. And basically, like, not only do I think that's cringe, I think it's impractical. And I think that's almost a spiritual battle between Tucker and Nick right now, is Tucker saying like, hey, Jews are not a monolith. And if we return to ethno-religious tribalism, we're fucked. So we can be giga conservative and push people towards our worldview, but we cannot divide ourselves amongst these tribal loyalties except for when it makes sense. And I think what he said, when it makes sense, is if you're more loyal to Israel than to the United States, then you're not really an American and you can get effed. And that's a line that he's willing to draw. So I do find that interesting. I actually find that a worthwhile descriptive difference between Nick and Tucker is exactly what was just said. So I find that extremely interesting. Let's continue.
I don't know. Why not just say that?
Say what?
That. Why not make every statement about how Americans ought to behave applicable to all Americans? Like, it's the defense of universal values that will hold the country together, and the emphasis on parochial group values that will break it apart inevitably.
Because this is a particular issue and it's acute. Like I said, I think they are unique in that way. I think that's a unique issue, especially in the Republican Party, especially in the conservative scene. So
how would you like this all to be resolved?
What I would like is for...
this is the most important question of the night. I wonder how he's going to respond.
The U.S. government to not be influenced by these kinds of foreign allegiances, not with money that comes from, American citizens like Sheldon Adelson, not from foreign lobbyists. So, I mean, in terms of tangible things, I don't think we disagree on any of it.
No. That feels like a hiding the power level moment. I'm going to go back to one. No. He doesn't just say, oh, I want Israel to become just another country on the world stage, and I want, lobbying for Israel from American citizens to be limited. That's not what he says. What he says is he wants to dispossess Jews of political power, which sounds infinitely more intense than what he just said.
Registering AIPAC and FARA, banning dual citizenship. I'm basically in agreement.
I think 80% of the public agrees with those things. So that's kind of what gets me a little bit annoyed. It's like, these are, like America First, the concept, it's the most popular, self-evidently true idea you could have. Like, don't let foreign powers, especially tiny ones far away, control your country. Like, of course not. Mm-hmm. Everyone agrees with that on both sides.
Yeah.
So the trick is not to let that idea get subverted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think we agree on that.
But it's subverted when they're like, that's hate. No, that's hate. It's not hate.
Yeah. Well, and, here's what I will say. I think that there is increasingly a contingent, because what you're talking about exists. When you say that there are people that legitimately detract from this, there is legitimate racial hatred out there.
Big time.
And it's growing. And
I know
people on our side are afraid to talk about it because they know, like you said, they're going to get called a cuck or a squish or whatever. And I agree with you. The people that are detracting from that need to be called out. And I think there should be no harbor for cruelty, hatred, prejudice, those kinds of things.
And some of them, I'm sorry to be a conspiracy nut. I really try not to be a conspiracy because it's embarrassing, But after January 6th and just finding out the number of FBI personnel in the crowd, it's like, and I've just seen this. David Duke is a great example. Some of these are the Charlottesville rally.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
had a bunch of feds there.
Oh my God, I hate this I saved myself. Dude, 274 FBI agents were dispatched after the riot. You numbnuts. Dude, this pisses me off so bad. I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but I'm going to spread some misinformation real quick. If 274 FBI agents were there after the rioting started, that doesn't mean that they were part of the riot, you dipshit. All you're doing is you're throwing red meat to your audience. Fucking hell.
Being like, we're white supremacists. We hate the blacks. You know, using the N-word, whatever. You know, it's like, that's not real. Like, there is some of that going on, don't you think?
I think that
Nick has said it on his own show, you dummy. God, I hate this. All right, I'm going to 125. These guys are pissing me off.
I think that there's a lot of sincere people.
Well, for sure. Oh, I completely agree.
You know, and they're just numbskulls, and some of them are legitimately, they see the opening, that there's legitimate critique of this, and they see an opening to air out their grievances. They get a license to, they think it's okay now. And I do think it's important to differentiate and say that fundamentally, I guess the word that I would use, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, is reassurance, because I think there's a legitimate, there is a legitimate need to reassure people. And this is kind of what I've been doing on these podcasts, that we don't want to harm anybody. We don't want to kill anybody. We don't want to harm anybody. Right. We just want to put America first. And I guess, you know, to the extent that I've been taken out of context over the years or things like that, I'm trying to set the record straight and say, you know, and I appreciate you've given me this opportunity. These are my real views. I'm not one of those haters, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I think people should be allowed to describe what they think. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's like a basic human autonomy question.
Yeah.
Like, if I want to know what you think, I should just ask you and let you talk.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So who's going to be president? Who should be president next?
Who should be president? Well, yay, of course. Kanye.
You had dinner with Trump.
I did.
And Kanye.
Yes.
What did you think of that?
All right. I just want to show this real quick, because one of the things that I get frustrated with is the people believing that Jewish ethno-religious affinity for the mother country is unique. And it's not unique. 40 years ago, this would have been very, very, very relevant. Ireland, Israel, ethno-religious affinity. So I remember a conversation. I read a book when I was growing up called Trinity. And Trinity was by a guy named Leon Uris. Okay. And in this book, it talks about like late 19th century, early 20th century Irish revolutionary who grows up with like a loving father and loving mother who are not a part of the church, but they're hardworking and they're mistreated by the Protestants. And then as he grows up, he falls in love with a Protestant girl, and he gets into fights with, you know, Protestants. And there's basically like gang bar fights between Protestants and Catholics all the time. And then what ends up happening is the love of his life during a ethno-religious riot is murdered with hammers because she's a religious traitor for dating for having consensual relations with a Catholic. And so as a result of this rage, he joins the IRA, probably before the IRA exists, and he helps raid an armory. And they steal a bunch of guns from the British government, and he gets killed holding the line against British troops. And so that's the story of Trinity. And so I read that growing up, and I was just thinking to myself, like, well, how fucked up is it that this guy is getting mistreated in his own homeland, right? Because this guy is Celt. He's, you know, he's a Celt. He's from Ireland. His people came here. They didn't colonize anyone. So why is this guy getting treated like shit within his own country? And why is ethno-religious bigotry leading to the murder of his girlfriend, right? And so for me, because of Leon Uris's, it's a fictional story, but still, like, it's obviously based on real world events. I had a Irish nationalist affinity. And somebody asked me this in my teenage years. They were like, hey, if you were born in Ireland, do you think you would be a part of the IRA? And I think I answered, yeah. I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because there are these people, they came to quote unquote my country. They are economically abusing and socially abusing quote unquote my people. And they're doing so through politics and force of arms. And it's unjust. And when something is unjust, you fight it. But what ended up happening was, I'm not the only person who ever thought like that. Like there are millions, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of Irishmen who have died fighting the British or died under unjust English rule over the past 200 years. And so as a result, that affinity is not alien to anyone. Like most people understand it instinctively. But what ended up happening, what's brought Ireland peace within the past 2 or 3 decades, was not some glorious Irish reunification like predicted in Star Trek, where there was going to be an Irish unification in 2024 or something like that. What ended up happening was the Irish Catholics, they said, you know what? Maybe them being Protestant doesn't matter anymore. Maybe them being English doesn't matter anymore. Maybe we should focus on the internal development of Ireland more than we should focus on fighting the English in Northern Ireland. And as a result, Ireland has become a tax haven, basically, a international tech tax haven, where a bunch of digital companies have moved their headquarters to Ireland so they could benefit from tax benefits in Ireland. That has then revitalized the economy of Ireland and made them one of the biggest tech hubs in Europe. So that's what happened here. It wasn't a force of arms. It was diplomacy and a go along to get along attitude that has completely revolutionized Irish English relations within the past generation. And so, and I'm pretty sure there were people during the 80s who were saying like, oh, this problem will never go well. This will never end. The IRA will never give up. The IRA will never give up land. And I'm sure the IRA said that. The IRA said, oh, well, we're never going to give up Northern Ireland. We won't stop until it's resolved. And so when you look at Israel and you look at Jewish loyalty to Israel, when you look at the people's denial of a two-state solution being possible, or Arab Muslims and Jews being integrated, I think that we're doing so with full sobriety, looking at the current ethno-religious conflicts between Palestinians and between Jews. But I would still give it another century. And I think it's entirely possible that Palestinian Arabs, Arab Muslims, will be living in a unified Israeli state, and they will be to some degree second-class citizens, but they're going to be more focused on development, economic development, social development, human achievement, than they're going to be focused on, well, we need to destroy Israel and take it all back. So, yeah, see, and Trilkvit says 7 counties in Ireland still need to be free. Yeah, okay, good luck with that, bro. So anyways, my whole point is, when people say like, oh, Israeli ethno-religious affinity, or excuse me, Jewish American ethno-religious affinity for Israel is totally alien, I think it's bullshit. I think anybody with Irish background who knows Ireland's history could have a similar attitude to Ireland as Jews have for Israel. Anyways, long-winded point, but still a point. Your story isn't comparable at all. One was an ethnic and political problem. The Jews are unique in their history. Nick explains it later. I mean, I'll be happy to let him explain it, but isn't comparable at all. Obviously, it's comparable. They're intractable ethno-religious conflicts between multiple groups that don't seem to have any hope of ending. They're both ethnic problems. They're both religious problems. They're both political problems. The Jews are unique in their history, but that doesn't make sense to me. Conservative liberalism says the comparison in Ireland doesn't wash when you end it with unified Israel where Palestinians exist as second-class citizens. Yeah, but I think that's more likely. The Irish weren't persecuted for 3,000 years? Yeah, they were persecuted for like 500 to 1,000. When did William of Orange invade Ireland? When did William of Orange invade Ireland? 1690, so 1700 practically. 300 years. Yeah, so 300 years. And then when did the English invade Ireland? Might have been 1690. But I wouldn't be surprised. 1169. Yeah, so you have 800 years of English violence in Ireland. So yeah, maybe that's not 3,000, but 800 years is still a long time, bro.
It was surreal because those are my two heroes. Those are my two like number one heroes of all time. I've always been a Kanye West fan.
You like the music first?
Yes, the music, the fashion, everything.
Really?
Yes.
Do you wear those weird one-piece shoes?
I do.
You actually do?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like in public?
Yes. You don't think that's cool?
No, I do. I don't know what I think.
I'll get you some.
I've worn the same clothes since high school. Don't ask me about clothes. I'm not good at that at all. That's hilarious. So, but you've always been a fan.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
huge fan.
You described your love for Trump, like sincere
Yes.
childhood love for Trump. So what was it like to find yourself at dinner with them?
It was funny because it was literally Thanksgiving dinner. It was 3 days before Thanksgiving. So not only was it dinner, but I'm having Thanksgiving dinner with Ye and Trump at the same table. And these are like my heroes. And, the way that it went was sort of interesting. Ye is sort of shy. He deeply admires Trump. He loves Trump. And I like that about him because Ye really admires anybody that's an industrialist. He loves.
Justin says, have the Irish assimilated into English culture and American culture? The Gaelic language is almost extinct. Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree that there's a shitload of Irish assimilation into English culture. As a matter of fact, I would say I've been assimilated into the Anglo-Saxon project of the North American continent, the American project. However, what I would say is if you were talking about assimilation and violence 40 years ago, everybody would have been talking about the IRA. Everybody would have been talking about the IRA and how the problem was not going to be resolved.
Builders, visionaries, architects. He's very into that. So he has a deep regard for Trump. And so at the beginning, it was a little awkward because he wouldn't talk. And he was sort of shy.
Yay.
Yes. Which is surprising, right? Because he's so outspoken. But Trump was trying to get him to talk. And it was kind of like a boomer moment because Trump was trying to get him to talk about like opportunity zones. He was giving him like the black voter pitch, the black Republican.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, dude, like he's not that kind of Republican to say the least,
Fair.
At this point, I think people know.
So what were you saying?
Well, so eventually, Trump didn't have a lot of luck with him. So he's kind of fielding the table and he's talking to me. And
Trump does like other people to talk.
Yes. Well, he likes to talk too.
He does, for sure.
Yeah.
But he asks questions.
Yeah, he does.
More than you would think.
Well, he's a good guy, fundamentally.
Yeah.
He's a very warm guy. So he was asking
God, I just want the Epstein files to leak, bro. God, I just want them to leak.
everybody, what's up and who are you? And we got to talking. And, I guess it was going too well because I was being very complimentary of Trump. And Ye was kind of kicking me and saying like, a couple of days prior, we were talking about if Trump and Ye wind up on the debate stage, what is that going to look like? And I was coaching Ye like, these are his weak areas. Like, this is where we got to attack Trump. And so Ye was like, tell him what you were saying the other day. Tell him what you were saying last night. And I was like, dude, that's our playbook. Like, we don't want to blow up our... and Trump was like, go ahead. Don't be bashful. Tell me, what is it? And I said, you know what? I said, I think you're one of the greatest living Americans. I said, I'm a young guy. I said, I really have nothing to say other than thank you. I have nothing but gratitude for what you've done for the country. I said, it's really not my place, to give you advice or correct you. And he said, no, don't be bashful. Tell me. And the story that I brought up was, this was really what sent me. In the first Fox News debate in 2015, in the Republican primary,
Yes.
Bret Baier, the first question, said, raise your hand if you will not pledge to support the eventual nominee.
Yes.
And Trump raised his hand because that's what he was saying. He said, if I don't win, I'll run independent and I'll make Republicans lose. And so I brought that up and I told that story and I said, I feel like what was inspiring in 16 is that you were willing to let the Republican establishment lose. Like you were serious about blowing them up. Such that you are not going to say, like Pat Buchanan, who I respect, but Sam Francis acknowledged that was one of his great mistakes, was ultimately endorsing Bush. I said, it showed you were serious. You were playing to win because you said, I will let this Republican Party crash and burn. I want to run as the Republican, but if I can't, I'll run independent. I said, and that's how I knew you were serious. And that's how I knew you were the guy. I said, and I feel like lately, this was right after Ronna McDaniel became the head of the RNC again. I was like, I feel like lately you're just behind all these people. I said, we're not here for Kevin McCarthy. We're not here for Ronna McDaniel or Mitch McConnell. I said, we are here for you. Like, we will die for you. We are loyal to you.
Yeah. Listen, guys. If you're bisexual or homosexual, God bless you. I hope you find your partner. I hope you find somebody that you love and who loves you. And I hope you guys smoochy kiss, and I hope you guys hold hands and you get a small dog and you live together forever in happiness. Okay? That was gay. Okay? That was gay. That was gay. That kind of like monarchic loyalty grosses me out. Okay? Grosses me out. This is so fundamentally anti-American. Being involved. Why are you frowning? I said, I hope you find your gay lover and you guys love each other forever. Oh, no. What? Did we get taken out? What?
Said it when you did.
My internet's still good. Let me know when we're back. I'm still here. Let me know when we're back. What? All right. Can you guys hear me now? Randy says back. Todd Sullivan, we're back. All right, cool. If you guys can hear me, okay. What's so interesting about that, I don't know if you heard that, but what ended up happening was Nick said, we're not here for all of these people. You know, we're not here for Kevin McCarthy. We're not here for this guy. We're not here for that guy. We're not here for that. We're here for you. And we're ready to die for you. And what I said in a very long, drawn out term is I said gay. Okay. And the reason why I said gay, because, and this is what I said to you guys, but then you guys said that the stream was ripped, was that if you're homosexual or bisexual in my chat, good for you. I hope you find your gay lover. I hope you find somebody who loves you as much as you love them. I hope you guys hold hands and go on walks together and you get a little 20-pound dog and you live forever together. Okay. If you're gay, I want you to have gay happiness, gappiness, if you will. Having a legitimate political pundit who is large saying, I'm here, we're here for you, and we're ready to die for you is so gay. I would die for my kids. I would die probably for my wife. I would die probably for my wife. I would definitely kill for my wife. I'd probably die for my wife. Saying that you would die for another man that you're not related to, and that's gay. Okay. Let off the gay shit. Oh, you want me to do it more? No, that's it. That's all I was going to say. So I think that this is incredibly lame, incredibly weak. It's one of my biggest criticisms of the far right is this belief that some big, strong man is going to come hold your hand and walk you through life and make everything right. It's so fucking lame, man. That's so lame. So lame. All right. Let's let him make more points.
Did that showed you could
If we get taken out again, let me know.
win, and we rallied. I said, so I want to see more like
I'm going to keep the screen small, so hopefully we don't get taken out.
Dad, I want to see you hit DeSantis, let's say, who was running against him. And he was like, oh, okay. He goes, oh, so you like that? It was right after he called him DeSanctimonious.
Yeah.
I said, that was awesome. You should have kept hitting him. He's like, oh, you like that? He goes, this guy's hardcore. I like this guy he was saying about me. And so I was trying to just get his mojo back, and, gas him up a little bit. And so that's how it went between me and him.
And what was Ye saying at this point?
Well, he was beaming with pride. Because Trump turns to him and says, who is this guy? This guy's great. And Ye was like, right? And I was like, this is amazing.
Did you call your parents from the parking lot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You'll never believe. Yeah.
I try never to think how will this be perceived? It's better just to be as honest as you can be all the time. And, and honest people will.
Wait, so what was that lame ass Russian grocery store bit, Tucker? If you're trying to be as honest as you possibly can be all the time, then what was that lame-ass pro-Russian propaganda bullshit with the grocery store, Tucker? What was that? Was that you being honest? You being shocked by Russia having cheap groceries? That was you being honest? What are we talking about here?
Respond, agree or disagree, but they'll feel your sincerity and your honesty. But there are always people who are going to distort it. And I recounted basically the Christian gospel at Charlie Kirk's memorial service, and everyone's like, you're an anti-Semite. I literally didn't have one thought about Jewish people. I had nothing to do with that. It was whatever. So, but I was thinking about this conversation.
People don't typically die for laws and principles. They die for other people and what they represent. Yeah, but you're saying that, Justin. But as an example, there's this beautiful song called The Battle Hymn of the Republic, or even the Crusades, dude. Like the Crusades were an idea. The Crusades were that Christendom is being threatened by the barbarian Muslim horde. They're invading and taking the Holy Land. The Holy Land is the place of Jesus. It's something that, Christian pilgrims keep getting ransacked and murdered by, Ottoman, Turkish brigands. And so it's the role of every dutiful Christian in Europe to go sack the Holy Lands, and then, or well, not sack, but reconquer the Holy Lands. Same thing with the Republic of the United States. Like the revolution was absolutely about ideas. So I don't even think that's true. And same thing with the fight for slavery. That was purely about ideas. It's the concept of slavery. I don't think Irishmen were very excited to go fight for the freedom of black folk. I think they were fighting for the preservation of the Republic of the United States. So yeah, so like obviously people fight for the man to their left and to the right, but people kill and die for all sorts of highfalutin ideas. So I don't know. I don't agree with you. I think you have an incomplete picture.
Conversation, which I'm sure can't imagine in the ways that it'll be distorted, but I do hope that people who want to learn what's happening and who you are will watch the whole thing. It's probably naive hope that it won't be reduced to whatever you're saying something naughty and me laughing and see they're both Nazis. I mean, that's going to happen, of course, but I'm willing to take that risk because I just think it's important to know you're clearly ascendant. You're enormously talented, more talented than I am, for sure, as a talker. So, and they've, there've been a lot of attempts to silence you and it hasn't worked. So my calculation, I'll just be as blunt as I can be. It's like, do I want to have Fuentes on? Everyone's going to be like, but you're a Nazi just like Fuentes. Okay. But then I'm like, I don't think Fuentes is going away. Ben Shapiro tried to strangle him in the crib in college, and now he's bigger than ever. So it probably would just be worth hearing what Nick Fuentes thinks. I just want to be transparent about my motives here.
Yeah.
So those are my motives. Let me ask you, I referred earlier to the assassination attempt against you, and it's very fashionable, among the permanent victim class, every BLM leader was, they're trying to kill me, or Seth, whatever, from the Babylon Bee, people are trying to kill me. And people use threats against them, which are daily for a lot of us, as a way to kind of make themselves unassailable or immune from criticism, or to attack their enemies. Your words inspired violence. What is stochastic terror? I can't even pronounce it. It's like some academic term, whatever. But you had a real assassination attempt.
Oh my God, you lying sack of crap. You don't know what stochastic is after a decade? That's baloney.
An actual one, which got no publicity that I recall. What happened?
Yeah, well, it was after the election last year. I put out this tweet and I said, your body, my choice on election night. And, I wasn't, look, I'm not going to apologize for it, but I thought it was like a weak, just like a lame joke. It's kind of like the most obvious turn of phrase.
It's a college
like,
joke. Yeah, it's kind of
I thought it wasn't. I had other good jokes that night, but that was like the one that caught on because I just think it captured the imagination of liberals who were like, "It's over for us," you know, which it kind of is, you know. But in some ways, but so
I don't know how they're feeling about that in the past 24 to 48 hours.
Put that out there. I didn't even vote for Trump, but I put that tweet out. I didn't vote at all. I just recused myself. But that's just what makes it ironic because I became in some ways emblematic of the election, even though I didn't participate. But so it got 100 million impressions on Twitter. And people were saying on the news that kids were saying it in school. It was on like the news that in middle schools and high schools, the boys were saying that to the girls. Your body, my choice. So it became this thing where it's like, he's creating this toxic environment for women. So the internet lost its mind and people then started posting my address online because they were so unhappy with the tweet. And so on TikTok and on Twitter, a screenshot of my address, my phone number, all my personal information, it went viral. And when I say viral, I mean, there were multiple tweets that got 20 million views with my whole readout, all my information.
Like your actual address where you spend the night?
Yes, where I live, where I do my show, all of it.
Damn, did you know that?
Yeah, I started to see it. So the election Tuesday, obviously, it was like Thursday that my address starts blowing up. I was going to do a show Friday and someone shows up to my house. Some weird looking guy shows up to my house and just walks through the yard, walks through the gangway into the backyard and is just circling my house and then goes away. So we call the cops, me and my producer, and we said, maybe we shouldn't do a show tonight. And that weekend, we hired private security just for the weekend, like 200 people.
You didn't have security?
No, I don't have security. Well, I didn't then.
Of any kind?
I didn't have cameras or anything even. I had nothing.
Okay.
I was raw dogging it. Yeah, which was not smart.
Nice.
Maybe, but never had a problem like that.
I've always lived that way too.
Yeah. But so that weekend, we hired a security guard just to park his car outside the house and monitor things. Literally 200 people came.
To your house?
Yes. Not all at once, but one after the other. Driving by, yelling, walking by, throwing eggs. Multiple people threw eggs at my house, ordering pizzas, ordering DoorDash, whatever, walking through the gangway. It was like a war zone. Like the security guard was yelling at people all night and it went on all weekend. And then it went on throughout the next week and the next weekend. And it was bad. I got out of my house. I went to a hotel for a week while this was happening, waited for it to blow over.
You do your show from the hotel?
No, I took a week off.
Wow. Did you announce any of this in public?
No, I had to keep it very...
Why?
I didn't want to track more of it.
Yeah.
You know, because if you say, oh, they're here, then people go, oh, no, we got to keep up the pressure, you know, or turn it up. And people at that time were talking about burning my house down. Like on TikTok, there were viral videos of people saying, we're going to burn his house down. And then they doxed my parents' address. People showed up to my parents' house.
I might have a little bit of a spicy take here, okay? Part of the reason why I would say I'm not as viral as these characters is because I'm telling you what I actually think. And I also have a more normie political perspective. In my more normie political perspective is that violence is bad, okay? And that violence might be necessary. Like you might have to detain people, incarcerate people, kill people, shoot people, spray mace in people's faces, tase people, but it should typically be a last resort. And I think what I find richly ironic and kind of stupid from this perspective is that Nick seems to like relish in ideas that imply violence. So when you say, oh, well, Hitler wasn't that bad of a guy, what you're really saying is National Socialism, one of the most violent ideologies of the early 20th century, was not only bad, but had arguably good things, and we should reinstitute it. That's the argument by inference that almost everybody makes. Same thing with Joseph Stalin. Oh, Joseph Stalin, one of the most murderous shitbags of the early 20th century. Oh, well, he wasn't that bad of a guy. Oh, okay. Well, clearly authoritarianism isn't that bad. You should be able to just kill your political enemies. So there's all this endorsement of violence by proxy. And when you say, oh, well, you know, we need to dispossess the Jews of political power in order for Christians to seize power within the United States again, there's, of course, implied violence there. You're going to have to legalistically prohibit an ethno-religious group from having political free speech, political freedom of conscience, the ability to engage in commerce, the ability to engage in marketing. So you're talking about like a total violation of the spirit of the Constitution of the United States. And if somebody goes against you in reference to that, you're going to have to use the violence of the state in order to tamp down on them. That's presuming that you're not hiding your power level. That's presuming that you just want to do what you want to say. So considering that he has all this like endorsements of violence by proxy, the fact that he is, freaked out by the fact that, oh shit, if I say the wrong thing and piss off enough people, people will come to my house. They will egg me. They will threaten to burn down my house, and somebody tried to kill me. I hope that's like a sober reality check for Nick. What he's talking about isn't cute. It's not funny. And by the way, I saw him reverse course on this. There was probably about 2 weeks there where he was being like a sober, pseudo responsible pundit. Yet last night before, he said something, he posted, or somebody was posting a clip on Twitter where they were like, oh, you think I'm a Nazi? Well, guess what? There's millions of us and they would kill for me. They would die for me. You want to say shit like that? Guess what? Shit could get very real very quick. So that's where Nick waffling between responsible rhetoric, which I think he largely adopted because he was afraid of being killed, now to jumping back to, oh, since I've been on Tucker Carlson, I'm big as hell. I'm getting sucked into the mainstream. I got a 1,000,000-man Groyper army and they'll kill for me. They'll die for me. It's like, I don't know, bro. I don't think you're the second incarnation of Hitler. I don't think you're the second incarnation of Stalin. Pretty sure you're a little bit smaller than that. And how do I say this? There's always a bigger fish than you. Always.
House. It got really bad. And eventually it just blew over. About a month passed. And at that time, so it was like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th.
Anonymous says, did I see Kanye apologizing to a rabbi? I did.
Remember, because that's an important date to me. And
What?
it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of
Jesus Christ. Right here. This would be something to dig into.
Collins.
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer. But we don't need to go into that. I guess.
Well, that's okay. Let's get back.
Well,
We'll circle back to that.
It was weird because the reason I mentioned that, it was almost like, because I woke up that day and I was like, oh, it's December 18th. And I was just like very acutely aware of like, today's like a strange day. This is the day that the attempt happened. And so nothing had been happening for weeks at this point. So election's like what, November 3rd, month and a half has passed. Nobody's coming to my house anymore, rarely. And I'm doing my show like normal. And I'm reaching the end of the show and I see out of the corner of my eye, I get an alert from my Ring doorbell camera that somebody's at the.
Starhawk says, oh, so violent language is not a joke and is super serious now, eh? Starhawks, do you have autism? Do you have autism? I think you have autism. I think you got hardcore autism, bro. If Nick Fuentes said, if I was in a room with Destiny, Pol Pot, and Hitler, I would shoot Destiny twice. I don't think that is Nick Fuentes legitimately saying that he's going to hunt down and kill Destiny because I don't have autism. Okay. Whereas if Nick Fuentes says, I like Hitler, I like Joseph Stalin, Jews need to be dispossessed of power within the United States, I'm an authoritarian, I'm a Christian authoritarian, I'm a Christian theocrat, the Constitution is lame, the Enlightenment was a mistake, liberalism was a mistake, letting homosexuals out of the closet was a mistake, trans people are an abomination, black people are inherently criminal, Jews run the world, this, that, the other. What was the quote that was playing all day, every day on the Twitter the other day? It was like, Jews run the world, blacks are committing crime, women vote against white male interest. If we had just put all these people back in their place, then we wouldn't have any problems and we would live in paradise. That was a quote that he was saying. I don't think he's joking. It is perhaps a joke in that it's kind of funny to think that you would be able to solve all of your problems just by pushing everybody into the closet. But I don't think he's joking at all. I think that in an ideal world for Nick Fuentes, most black people who committed any kind of crime would be incarcerated probably for life as a eugenics program. I think that if he was put in power, women would be second-class citizens, that men would be allowed to beat or maritally rape, or would be dispossessed of the right to vote, or would be dispossessed of sexual reproductive care. And I do think that he would want to rule as an authoritarian, where what he said went. And not just that, I think his admiration of Trump, his sincere admiration of Trump, is specifically because Trump has acted like an authoritarian. The reason why he said I will kill for you. I will die for you. Other people would kill for you. Other people would die for you. I think it's because he loves authoritarianism. Like, what the fuck do you want from me, man? Yeah. And Kay is saying that, like, his moderation wasn't even sincere. He was just trying to appeal to as broad of a base as possible to suck as many people in. Yeah. Yeah, Trump almost got killed twice. Nobody's untouchable. Yes. Anyways.
Front door. And so I'm reading through my super chats. I'm going through live
You're
chat
on the
messages.
air.
Yeah, I'm live. And, I'm working through the messages and I'm keeping an eye on it. And I see that this guy has a loaded gun. The guy's
Start laugh.
Yeah, well.
So you're live, and
yes.
you see that there's a guy with a gun outside your door.
Yes. He's got a motorcycle helmet and a backpack. He's got a gun drawn and he's knocking on the door yelling. And the thing is, I didn't want to tip him off.
See? Anonymous chatter gets it. Violence is just diplomacy through other means. Grill shala, baby. Dude, why do you think I cloak Clausewitz all the time?
That I knew he was there. Because I thought, I don't want him to get the drop on me or something. I just didn't want to give him any information about, because I don't know if he's listening to my show. If I start freaking out or cancel the show, I don't know. Maybe he knows more about my movements inside.
Okay, Starhawks. So according to you, but according to other people in my chat, Jay Jones, the district attorney of Virginia, said that he wanted to kill his opponent and that he thought that conservative children should die or needed to die or something because conservatives don't pay attention to anything until it specifically affects them. Those are the two statements that he said. We both agree that that's what he said. Okay. Now, the reason why I would say that's hyperbole or jokes is because I don't think as a state attorney, he's going to be allowed to rule in a disproportionate political way. I don't think that the state constitution is going to allow him to do that. I also think that there will be almost zero chance. Like, I'll pay you $100. How about that? If Jay Jones murders a conservative in the next 100 years, or if he tries to legalize the murder of a conservative in the next 5 years in his office, then I'll pay you $100. However, pretending that Nick the Knife Fuentes, like, his rhetoric and his jokes don't line up, I think is absolute fucking cope. I think there's a reason to suspect that Jay Jones was being hyperbolic, and I think there's a reason to suspect why Nick Fuentes is not being hyperbolic. There's a substantive difference here, and if you didn't have autism, you would understand it.
So I keep the show going for a minute, and I wrap it up very quickly. I finish the show. My producer comes running in, and I say, "Who is that? What's going on?" And he goes, "Oh, I called the cops. They're here. The guy's gone." I said, "Okay, good." So I start getting changed out of my suit and I hear gunshots go off outside.
Damn.
Yeah. And I literally jump to the ground because I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. And I step outside for a minute after the dust kind of settles and there's 10 cop cars all up and down the street and they have the whole block locked down. Police tape everywhere. There's a dozen cops. Like I said, the whole block is shut down. The alley is shut down. And they go, "Get back inside, get back inside." We have no idea what's going on. We have no idea what happened. And they wouldn't let me or my producer leave until the morning. That's how late they were there. And finally, at the end of the night, after all the cops left, I came out in the very early morning.
Did no one come and explain any of this to you?
No, nobody said anything. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And finally, I go out in the morning and I asked the guy, "Oh, okay, what happened?" He told me the story. And so it turns out that it's this young guy. He's 23 years old, white nerd, short guy. He was at U of I, University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, about 2 hours south of where I live. He killed 3 people earlier in the day. He went to his roommate's house, college roommate's house, killed his roommate, killed the sister, the guy's mother, got in his car and drove directly to my house, parked outside my house, got out a .22 pistol and an automatic crossbow. Weird choice. And he knocked on the door.
I own that crossbow, by the way.
Which is where I saw him. He went around the house. He tried the back door, tried the front door, and the cops pulled up. He took off running through the gangway, hopped the fence, ran into the neighbor's house. I guess he went into the neighbor's basement because the door was unlocked. He was hiding from the police. He shot 2 of their dogs, which is devastating. He runs back outside and the cops see him. He shoots at the cops. The cops shot him in the face and he dies on the spot.
What was his motive?
They never told me. To this day, I have no idea.
They never told you?
No.
So what contact did you have with the police after this?
They came by about a week later. Illinois State Police came to retrieve the ring camera footage of the whole incident. And so they had me download that onto a thumb drive. And that's it. I never heard from the cops, never heard from the government.
Not at all?
No, nothing.
A guy comes to murder you. He's murdered 3 other people and 2 dogs. He gets shot to death and no one bothers to tell you anything?
Nope, nothing.
I think because you're not really the victim here, right? Like the other 3 victims are the victims because they're dead. The people who had their dogs murdered are the victims because their dogs are dead. Whereas Nick had a guy who knocked on his door who was trying to murder him. But I mean, I think it's probably an open and shut homicide case. One of the craziest things that I ever did, by the way, was my first homicide. So my first homicide was crazy to me because I had a guy who was killed in front of me. He was shot down in front of me. My sergeant was doing CPR on him while I was, trying to hold his blood in, trying to apply pressure to his wounds. So this guy dies in front of me. And then I write the report for the homicide. And bear in mind, at this point, I'd been on the job for like 3 months. So I'd done like 1 billion traffic reports. I'd done like 1 billion burglaries. I'd done this, I'd done that. And my homicide report took 30 minutes because my homicide report was, I was at such and such location at such and such time. There were fights outside of such location that we were breaking up. There were shots fired in this general direction and this is the suspect vehicle that I believe I saw. And then I, rendered medical aid to such and such person, turned over medical aid to EMTs. EMTs declared that he was dead at XYZ ABC time. That was it. The homicide report was like 15 minutes. Whereas I swear to God, the burglary reports take forever because burglary reports you got to do arrived at such and such date, such and such time, made contact with such and such person. They wrote a sworn written affidavit stating XYZ ABC. XYZ ABC went ahead and verified physical evidence was similar to that. Here's an inventory of all the stolen items. And then boom, you got to list all the stolen items. So a burglary report could take like 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how much property damage there is and how much stuff is stolen. So all I'm saying now is that weirdly enough, homicides can oftentimes be more straightforward than property crimes from a reporting basis. What did I miss? Laugh my ass off. It's just Nick talking about the time that he was almost killed.
Is it really a country at this point?
No.
I mean,
it's ridiculous. And
so what was his motive? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
Is this even a country at this point?
So he was like 5 ring camera footage of the whole incident. And so they had me download that onto a thumb drive. And that's it. I never heard from the cops, never heard from the government.
Not at all?
No, nothing.
A guy comes to murder you. He's murdered 3 other people and 2 dogs. He gets shot to death and no one bothers to tell you anything?
Nope, nothing.
Why was the stream nuked? Probably just because you were watching this and this is probably copyrighted.
Is it really a country at this point?
No.
I mean,
what? Is America a country because police were thoughtless during a homicide investigation? I hate this, dude. The only way that you could say this is if you're the most privileged motherfucker on the planet. I swear to God. That's the only way that you could say that. Talk to any black person on the wrong side of the tracks about their experiences with law enforcement and see if they care if a law enforcement officer not notifying them about the specifics of a case is something they even give a shit about. That is crazy. That is a crazy statement to make.
It's ridiculous. And
so what was his motive? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. So the story that I read online, because obviously the news followed up on this, and they said that, so he was like 5'5". I guess he was involved with drugs, actually, with his roommate. They sold drugs together, something like that. They had falling out over the drug money or something like that. The roommate beat the shit out of him so bad he dropped out of school. He had this major falling out with the roommate, but they were close, had a big falling out. The shooter took him to small claims court over some money. And I guess this guy was just in a downward spiral. He lost his job. He got in a hit and run crash. And
Gen X, I was behind it. I just heard Conor say gappiness for gay happiness. So true.
And ran from the police. Then he was swearing at the cops when they showed.
Cameron Mosley says, I feel maybe violence as a diplomatic means can be used as justification to influence people without talking it out. Maybe I'm just a wussy. I don't know. No, that's not what I'm saying, Cameron Mosley. So what I'm saying, this is a quote from Karl von Clausewitz. All right. He's one of the greatest generals that's ever lived. Okay. So Clausewitz said that war is diplomacy by other means. And so what I don't like, maybe I need to do a drawing for this. File, new. Okay. We like to pretend, because we're stupid, that there is a firm line between violence and diplomacy. So let's put words / diplomacy, and let's put violence. And the reason why we do this is because in an ideal society, words and diplomacy should be an issue of first resort. Okay? I think we all agree with that words and diplomacy, you should exhaust that words and diplomacy. But you should exhaust words and diplomacy before you resort to violence. And so what a lot of people pretend is that words / diplomacy are divorced from violence, but that's not true. It's not true at all. It's never been true. Okay. Words and diplomacy exist on a spectrum with violence, where what we're really talking about is where politics is power. Who, what, when, where, why you wield power. That's what it is. And so when you're talking about taxation is kind of a form of violence, because what ends up, and this is actually a libertarian argument, the reason why it's a form of violence is because if you don't pay your taxes for long enough, or if you ignore the federal government, eventually a state agent will come to your house and incarcerate you. That's why people say taxation is theft. Same thing with laws, speeding tickets. Speeding tickets have an implied threat of violence, where if you do not accept or pay the speeding ticket, then eventually a state agent will find you and put you in a cage. And so while we always start with words, there can be words that lead up just to violence. And this is where, for me, Nick does this thing where, let's say that there's like the word violence spectrum. Nick gets right up to this line where he's saying stuff that is going to break into the violent spectrum, where he's like, oh yeah, like, you think I'm a Nazi? Well, there's a million of us. So if you come mess with me, then there are people who will kill for me. Those are people who will die for me. He does that. And by the way, I do that sometimes too. I tell you guys, if any of you come to my house and you threaten my family and you go after my family, then I'm going to do some very unpleasant things to you. I was doing that earlier. I was saying that Hassan Piker, if I had an opportunity, I would load him up into a trebuchet and fire him into the Caribbean. Now, am I going to engage in actual person-to-person violence with Hassan Piker? No. But if I could, would I? Probably. And so this is where, for me, like Nick, Hassan, a whole bunch of creators, they go right up to the line of where words become violence and then they back out at the last second. Whereas me, I'm like approaching it almost from the opposite direction, where I'm like, hey guys, violence is bad, but if you want to go that way, we can go that way. And from a legalistic perspective, you can do that. You can say, hey, I will engage in legal defensive violence, words, violence spectrum. So anyways, my frustration is that people always want to appeal to violence being divorced from words. But the truth is that, like, if I say that I'm going to beat you up, but then I don't beat you up, I still engaged in words that were leading right up to violence, and then I backed off at the last second. I think we understand this.
Showed up to arrest him, and I guess his life just kept getting worse and worse and worse. I assume he took it out on the roommate and popped off, killed the whole family.
It's horrifying, but how do you fit into that?
So this is just my opinion, speculation. This is like a month after Luigi Mangione. He had on and the shooter at my house had on a motorcycle helmet and like a costume. And so I think he was maybe like a copycat of Luigi Mangione. He thought he was going to be like a hero and assassinate some.
Got you. Bob Smith says Clausewitz was a great theorist, but not an actual general. Gotcha.
Reviled political figure who was going viral at that time, being hated for that tweet. So I think that might have been the motive, but that's pure speculation. I have no idea.
I mean, it's a well-documented fact that all kinds.
Randy says, by this rationale, everything the government does is violence. Yep. Or it has the implication of violence. 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Bad actors use unstable people for political assassinations, right? It's happened. We know it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think this might be an example of that?
I don't think so, but it's certainly possible. The reason I say I don't think
it's kind of funny. I mean, I think of you as conspiracy minded, but you don't have a conspiracy in mind here.
No, because I really believe that when you look at all these things, and by these things, I mean these like really disturbing instances of violence like Luigi Mangione or Charlie Kirk or these school shootings, there is something going on with these kids. It's nihilism. It's these people that are maybe mentally defective, extremely online. I think there's like a real problem there. And I don't doubt that sometimes.
Yeah, Justin, that's where I think you're wrong. Randy says assault versus battery. So in the state of Florida, the quote, "I'm going to beat you up," is assault, which is considered a violent crime, whereas battery is actually physically striking another person. So threats have to be discerned, sure, but threats are still considered violent even if they're not carried out.
Times these people are involved with maybe a foreign government or they're being groomed or put up to it by an operative. But I think to assume that it's always that ignores that like there's a very real problem of nihilistic, surrealist violence that comes from young people. And, you know, like this guy killed.
True. Nick's being incredibly realistic about his own near murder.
Well, it's a triple homicide out of nowhere. And then he tries to kill me. I think he just went crazy, but I could be wrong.
Describe the circumstances that have led to this violence. Like how does a normal kid, young man, go from being a normal young man to being a murderer?
I think that it has a lot to do. If you read through all these stories, they always have a few things in common, which is that, and people have pointed this out, this is not new. SSRIs are always a big one.
Of course.
But what that points to is a depressive streak. It's always somebody that is a loner, or socially dislocated or socially dysfunctional. You know, they don't have many real life friends, engage in real life activities, slip through the cracks. That's always how it starts. Then they get into either they're medicated by a therapist with SSRIs or they self-medicate, which is extremely common with alcohol, weed, which is extremely potent now. And you can get THC from like a vape pen. So it's very powerful, very accessible. You know, when I was in high school, my stoner friends would have to like go on a walk to the park and roll a joint. Now with the vape, you can hit that anywhere, I guess.
Of course.
It's very discreet. They also do psychedelics. I think that's a huge part of it. And
how is that a huge part of it?
I think that a lot of them get turned on. They'll do alcohol, marijuana, and then I think they get into psychedelics like LSD or MDMA. And I think,
yeah, real quick. Justin says, interesting. Florida is a tough place. It sure is. It's not for the weak, faint of heart. Jonah says, Nick just described his average fan, laugh my ass off. Dude, that's what I was thinking the entire time he was talking. I was like, dude, this sounds socially disaffected, doesn't have very many friends, kind of a loner, sometimes self-medicates. Like, I understand, like, a lot of groypers would say, oh, we don't like doing drugs because that's degenerate. But tell me that there aren't some people who are groypers who smoke a healthy chunk of weed. Anonymous Chatter says, the threat of violence can have the same effect as someone imposing violence. If it's used to coerce actions and speech, what's the difference? Well, and that's what I'm saying. That's actually what I'm trying to say with the painting is once you get into threats and coercion, that's still speech, but it's not discreetly divorced from violence. And that's where I would say, you know, Tucker saying like, oh, you know, the SPLC, the ADL, they were saying that I'm a stochastic, you know, propagandist. I don't even know what stochastic means. It's like, dude, you could have Googled it and you would have known. Like, matter of fact, let's just Google it real quick. Well, let's be a little bit better than Tucker Carlson as a political pundit. Stochastic definition. Definition, spelled that wrong, but that's okay. Randomly determined, having a random probability distribution or pattern that may be analyzed statistically, but may not be predicted precisely. So it's saying that it's the likeliness of occurrence is predictable, but you cannot make it predictable precisely. And so that's where somebody killing Nick could be argued to be stochastic violence, because Nick said something crazy on social media. Plenty of people started doxing him. All of his doxers knew that there was a chance that somebody would see his private information or his public information and choose to go do violence upon him. They knew that there was a chance. So they couldn't predict which specific person would go do a violent action, but they knew that by sharing his private information or public information, arguably, that they were increasing the chances that somebody would. Numinax renewed their membership. Thank you, King. MAGA Republicans are just now asking what happens when a Democratic president uses the powers we've given the office. Worse far-right violent rhetoric in the future? I have no idea, man. I got no idea, and I am worried. I am worried about the precedent that Trump sets, but I am hoping that like the adults will ultimately prevail. I'm praying.
Those things induce psychosis. These psychoactive drugs, whether it's marijuana by itself or it's LSD, I think they tend to induce psychosis and exacerbate those like existing problems. And basically what happens, I would say that is maybe the next step. And then the other ingredient that's always there.
Cameron Mosley says, thanks for explaining the diplomacy versus violence thing. My pleasure. I live to serve.
Is although they don't have a social life in the real world, they have a social life on the internet.
Yes.
And so they're deeply involved in obscure internet forums, Discord, gaming communities. So increasingly, ChatGPT is inducing psychosis. People talk to ChatGPT all day, all night. And you basically have between the three of these things, they kind of go into like a different world. Between the psychoactive substances, the make-believe reality of the internet, totally disconnected from the real world, I think they enter into like this delusional state. And I think that's where that shooter in Minneapolis, I think that's what that was. I think if Tyler Robinson is found guilty, there's been some interesting screenshots about him and his transgender boyfriend. It's the same story there, if that's true. And I would imagine it was not dissimilar with the guy that showed up and tried to kill me. I think those are always the ingredients that produce that kind of violence.
It's interesting, your audience, as I imagine it, I've never seen any of your numbers. I don't even know how big your audience is. It seems big to me, but I think of them as young men.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bulk of your audience, right?
Yes.
And yet here you are criticizing weed and video games and the internet, and you work on the internet. You are a creation. I mean, you wouldn't exist without the internet, of course. You didn't get a job at NBC News. So what kind of reaction do you get when you criticize weed, gaming, and the internet to young men?
A lot of them agree with it because they get it. It's their life. A lot of them, that's their life. Their life is, and another thing we didn't even bring up is the porn thing, which is there also. This is their life. Weed, gaming, porn. And I think they know it's bad. I think they know there's like some sense of guilt. And so it's interesting. I would say it's maybe an 80-20 split where 20% say, oh, you're against weed? Not cool, man. It's just a plant. Well, they're very defensive about it, about these addictions. And I think 80% say, I know I have a problem. Like I have a guilty conscience. I know it's bad. I know it's terrible.
Why are you against weed?
Because I think that it's compromises the integrity of your mental faculties. I think there's something deeply wrong with that. When you, I'm against alcohol too. I think it's wrong to numb pain. I think pain is a part of life. I think sobriety is should be experienced. And I think that weed is even worse because I think that, one, it's very dangerous. There's a lot of numbers now out of California and Washington that people are going to the hospital for psychosis. People are going crazy because of it.
It's also more subtle and therefore more insidious. You can't, I've done it. If you have a, 12 pack for breakfast, everyone knows. But if you take a hit off the dab pen, nobody knows. Mm-hmm. So you can use it all the time.
Yeah. And it makes you a loser. It makes you lazy. People that are addicted to weed are not motivated, don't care about anything other than weed. There's sort of an irony there where I used to hang out with a lot of stoners in high school. I never smoked weed, but all my friends did. And they were so chill and relaxed and didn't care about anything. But if you criticized weed, they would freak out and get extremely defensive.
Yes, I've noticed.
Right? If you insinuate that it's addictive, if you say it's a problem, they get very junkie behavior. And so I've always hated it. I think it's disgusting.
All right. Well, I still have, weirdly enough, I thought that we were going to get into more politics, who are you, all that kind of stuff. I know that there's still 30 minutes left, but I already gave them 2 hours in order to describe it. I parasocially love you guys. I got to run. Have a great day. Bye for now.